Hello, everybody. How is it going? Welcome to another session here at Vegan Primary Care Live here. Hello, welcome to another Vegan Primary Care Live session. This is Dr. Scott Harrington coming to you live from my doctor's office at veganprimarycare.com, where you can see a vegan doctor as your primary care doctor from the comfort of your own home from most U.S. states. If you happen to live in Florida, then I'm also open for in-person visits on Fridays in Pinellas Park. Come see me, not just for a one-time consultation, but as your primary care doctor, someone who gets to know you, and someone who can be your health advocate. Because I'm licensed in most U.S. states, even if you move, you don't have to change doctors. If you are vegan, then get a doctor who gets you. If you haven't adopted a plant-based diet yet, you are still welcome to be my patient. But beware, a healthy vegan diet, exercise, and lifestyle changes will always be my first recommendation. My goal is to help you take control of your health. And through the power of a healthy lifestyle, we'll work to heal your chronic conditions with the ultimate goal of helping you come off your chronic medications. For my patients who cut out animal products altogether, you will not only be helping yourself feel better, but you will also be doing your part to stop animal suffering and to decrease the impact of your products and services on the environment. In other announcements, we offer vegan primary care patients free weekly weight loss clinic check-ins with weight loss accountability visits on a private group Zoom meeting Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we will share our weight loss tips and tricks among the vegan primary care community. Remember that this content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This video is not intended to take the place of your own doctor's advice. Okay, we're streaming live from multiple platforms, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. Okay, so today I am honoring Dr. Gregor and walking on a treadmill here on my standing desk, where I often was not doing because it started to get squeaky. There was a squeak and it was just ridiculous. And then, so finally, I'm not a very, very handy person, but I decided I was going to do it. I could do it. So I talked myself up, and then I unscrewed the top and realized the drive band was kind of shifted a little bit. So I straightened it, and then now it's silent again. So you get to see me shifting and walking around. So I can try to stay moving and lead an example here. If you're at home and working, doing this kind of thing can help with back pain and help with stiffness, and it feels good. It feels good, and it's a healthy option. Okay, so the questions have already started coming in. I wanted to say thank you for those folks who had submitted early questions. Purity and plants. Oh, by the way, stick around to the end because there is a special guest today. There's a special guest. Okay. Purity and Plants says, good morning, Dr. Scott Harrington. What is considered a low-fat diet? Okay. Well, I think Purity and Plants, I think that the easiest way to answer this is to consider that when people go on a whole food plant-based diet and they don't do extra added salt, oil, and sugar, and if you have sort of a well-balanced whole food plant-based diet, the ratios that you're going to get for macros tend to be about 80% carbs, 10% protein, and 10% fat. And so that is what I would consider to be an appropriate amount of fat. The more fat that you get into, you just end up with more problems. It's harder to lose weight. And so the ideal is to get very low amount of saturated fat. Saturated fat should be really focused on and trying to avoid this. You want to avoid having more than 2 to 3 grams of saturated fat in a serving of food. So take a look at that. That's what I recommend for a low-fat diet. When you do these kind of ratios, it tends to be way easier to lose weight. Okay, thank you, period in plants. All right, let's go for Vita Liberata. I used to really enjoy eating salads, but in later my adulthood, I can only tolerate digesting a very small amount of raw greens in one sitting. Any tips to help me enjoy one big salad again? Wow, okay. This is a good question. So, Vita Liberata, I'm not sure if it's like making you have more indigestion, or it's sticking around in the gut for longer, or making you cause bloating, or there could be various reasons. And I help my patients work through these. We kind of get into the weeds, specifically what might be causing the problem. I've had patients who've had gallbladder surgery, and then when they eat like a fatty dressing, or they have peanut butter, or things that might even be healthy foods but are higher in fat, like avocado and stuff, and then they have trouble with indigestion, and have a feeling of like their intestines are rumbling, like rumble, rumble. And this is because with the gallbladder out, the bile that comes down is not very concentrated. And so you can't handle big boluses of fat in one serving. So that can be a problem. There's always this cruciferous spectrum. Here, let's see if I can share my screen here. Screen layout. Let's try this. Share screen. Share screen. Let's hope we can get this working. Okay, yeah. There we go. This cruciferous spectrum, basically, if you have, sometimes people have problems with the amount of fiber, especially in cruciferous, especially if you have the stems on the cruciferous and the broccoli here shown here. So it's not that you should stop eating broccoli altogether, because there are benefits, the sulforaphane, the cancer fighting properties. So consider just the florets, or if that's still causing you problems, steamed or cooked, or even cooked hard, where it's kind of almost like more of an army type of green, a drab green, or you can even really cut it up really fine or almost puree it. This can help with gas and bloating. Okay. All right, so let's stop sharing my screen here. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. You can take a look at. The other thing is that some of the greens are a little bit more, how do I put this? They're not as hard and harsh. For instance, if you're eating like collards or kale or something like this, those almost need to be beat up, where you're taking the kale and you're really, crushing it over time, so that it's almost like cooked, but it's kind of beat up. It's wilted and almost pre-chewed. I know this sounds kind of dumb, but kale is really, really, really strong, and it can be hard to chew through a bunch of kale. So when you consider that versus like baby spinach and baby arugula, this kind of stuff is just a little easier to chew through. There's also sprouts. Sprouts tend to be easy, high in nutrients, and so you can sort of increase the amount of sprouts in the salad. These are other tips. And then there's always the idea, if greens for some reason cause you a bunch of indigestion, you can always cook them, and you can cook down a significant amount of different greens to a smaller volume, and so there you get a higher sort of nutrient density by doing that. Basically, you can eat more. You can eat more greens that way. All right. Yes. So the key is not to eliminate salads. The key is trying to adjust it to find that what works for you. What works for you is a big concept. that I'm always trying to work out with my patients, because we know these ways are healthy to eat. We know increased fruit, increased vegetables is a way to eat. And then if you find out that you're doing it and it's causing you, whether some indigestion or something that's, some gas or something, then we have to find out what works for you. Okay. All right, Vita Liberata, I hope that helps. Let me know in the comments section if there's any more specifics with that, because I think that's a huge topic and I'd love to delve into it. Okay, we've got Sandra Cotto. Hello, Dr. Harrington. Hello, Sandra. Let me know where you're calling from, and let me have a question. Let me know. All right. Harry Shabatsky says, hi, doctor, I'm eating a balanced whole food plant-based diet, but I'm still not regular. Would you recommend a stool softener? Okay. Well, Marianne, so something is something is awry. Eating a whole food plant-based diet should have you very regular. So this is one of the things that's really surprises people when they go vegan or they're eating whole food plant-based, is the literal amount of stool that they have. And sometimes it scares people. But I kind of joke around. But I'm being kind of graphic. Every day you should have a huge volcano of poop every day, every morning. That is like kind of the goal, and it's relatively soft. And so, it's poop time every morning, and it should be large. And that's the goal. And the reason that I'm a little worried is that I think you might need to up your numbers. I think you might, Mayan, I think this sounds kind of weird, but I'm telling you that you should increase your food intake. The things that cause the bowels to, the factors in constipation are that the volume of food in a tube helps with like a toothpaste, the toothpaste tube analogy, where if a toothpaste tube is full, a small amount of pressure on the tube will cause the evacuation through the tip of the toothpaste tube. So it's easy for the colon to have, in the analogy with the colon, it's easy, a small amount of pressure will cause the urge to defecate, and then, you have the bowel movement and you can fully evacuate. But the colon's job is to dehydrate the food, to reabsorb the water from and hold the stool. So it helps us from becoming dehydrated by reabsorbing the water in the stool. And the longer that it stays in the colon, the smaller the volume is and the harder it gets. So the goal is to have a pretty regular bowel movement every day. And if this doesn't happen, you should increase your high fiber foods. Okay, but aren't all the foods that we're eating high fiber foods in a whole food plant-based diet? And the answer is yes, but take a look at this. Take a look at the idea of the high water content fruit and vegetables versus more of a low content, higher calorie density things like grains and beans. So if you took and put either one of those foods in a dehydrator, the amount of volume that would come out of the high water content veggies and fruit would be a lot. And so you'd be left with very small amount of debris at the end versus the grains and beans, they would be almost the same size. And so what I'm saying is increase your component of whole grains and beans. This is going to keep you very regular. I recommend things like quinoa. Quinoa is an amazing food, especially for constipation, because many of the quinoa particles will maintain their size and bulk, and you'll pass through. But all of these things like buckwheat, the kamut wheat, these whole foods, even things like the amaranth and teff, oat groats or steel cut oatmeal, make sure, regular oats, these whole grains will really help keep you regular. Now, if you're in a pinch, if it's been several days and you're worried and you can't, you're worried you're traveling or you don't have the food that you want to eat, I recommend Miralax. Miralax is a non-addictive laxative. It's titratable, which means you can take a little, you can take a middle, and you can take a lot. And so Miralax is a very safe osmotic laxative, which means it holds a little bit more water inside the intestines and bowels. So if you're already constipated, 1 dose won't do it. You probably need about 3 doses. Stay moving around, like don't just be sedentary, and drink a little bit more water. Miralax can be used in warm liquids or cold liquids, and it's tasteless and odorless. So it's really safe. You can use it for kids too if they're constipated, and it's over the counter, so it's relatively very safe. Now, prunes and things like that are supposed to be very similar to the osmotic reaction effects. So there are different fruit, things like prunes and pears, and things like kiwis are supposed to be helpful for constipation. Papayas, things like this. Okay, and then if you still happen to be constipated, my number 1 recommendation, believe it or not, is an enema. An enema, a warm water enema can help pass sort of the cork, and it can get you regular. So those are my recommendations for constipation. Okay, thank you, Mayanne. Okay, so Vita Liberata says, thank you. I'll try making adjustments and see what works. Okay. Okay, Purity Implant says, are there any benefits to drinking alkaline water? Okay, I don't know if I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, but so far I haven't done too deep of a dive into water and the water purity and this kind of thing. My biggest concern with the water is that it doesn't contain things like lead and other significant toxins. And so these things, we can look at local utilities and things to make sure that there's not those types of impurities. But I am sure that there's probably more impurities that we're getting from our water that I'm just sort of being willfully ignorant about. And if anybody wants to educate me, please send me more information. But the main thing that the local utilities worry about in the water is the coliforms and bacteria, so it's chlorinated. But the issue with alkaline versus acidic, I more worry about the food that we eat, suspecting that the food will have a higher effect on our alkaline and acid type of balance. And so when I think of the effect of the food, I would say it would way overwhelm sort of the effect of the water itself, because in chemistry, a little bit of solute in the solution can change the properties of the water dramatically. So my assumption is that this is a minimal effect compared to the food that you're putting in your body. So maybe it would have maybe a greater effect when you're doing these water fasts and this kind of thing. Certainly you'd want purified and drinking water, not distilled, purified drinking water. But that's what I know about this topic. If anybody wants to educate me, please let me know. There are effects of foods that we eat. There is the USDA database of foods includes something called a PRAL score. And this is the renal acid load, protein-related renal acid loads. And foods basically that are high in animal proteins, meat, cheese, and eggs and fish, have high renal acid loads. And even beans have a little bit of renal acid load, but most fruits and vegetables do not have. They have a negative PRAL score. So they cause alkaline effects. So I used to think this was kind of, maybe it was hogwash, but it turns out, yeah, it's a thing. They've got it calculated down to a science. They know how much acid load you get from your foods. And so this does have an effect in the long run. Long-term high doses of these acid-causing foods in your diet cause effects on your bones because your calcium has to buffer the effects of the acid, and you later will excrete more calcium. So that's why folks who eat more meat and cheese and acid-loaded foods have more kidney stones, and they have more risk of osteoporosis. Okay, send me the questions. Send me the questions. All right. Okay, so we've got, who's next? We've got Vita Liberata. Is farro a good grain? It wasn't on the list you mentioned when I recently discovered it, and it is delicious. Farro is delicious, and it is a whole grain. It is a wheat, a different type of wheat. It almost has a little bit of a sweet taste when you compare it against pearl barley and this kind of thing. And I find it amazing. It's really, it's inexpensive. You get it and you can cook it, and it's like a big old huge amount, and you can eat it like oatmeal, and you can eat it instead of like couscous dishes, and doing things like tabbouleh. So you can chop up parsley and you can put these in. You can even eat it like a rice pudding. Instead of rice, you can put the farro in, which has a sort of sweet aftertaste. And you can use it with like an oat milk or something like that to make it sweet with raisins. And so, oh my gosh, I love farro. Yes, yes, yes. Farro all the way. Okay, Roman says, can food help stop hair loss? Well, okay, Roman. Yeah, I guess the short answer is I don't think so. I don't think so, especially with male pattern baldness. If it's related to genetic differences in our makeup that make us responsive to testosterone and later on causing male pattern loss. Now, if the losses come out in patches and the hair loss is related to alopecia areata and other autoimmune illnesses, the assumption is that you can eat right to reduce inflammation and reduce autoimmune responses to things. So I guess the short answer is no, and I haven't heard of hair loss or hair improvement with the change in diet. And so, unfortunately, I wish that we had that. Now, there's a lot that you hear lately about aging. David Sinclair has he's a scientist who is renowned for studying aging and the aging processes. And he suggests that you can almost reverse your biological or your chronological age to a certain extent. And people make comments like, oh my gosh, he's looking very young. He's looked like he's not aging at all. So there may be more food that information that comes out about this type of reversal. Now, Dean Ornish has proven that you can increase the length of your telomeres through a plant-based diet. And so telomeres are the edges of the chromosomes, and they tend to get shorter as the DNA keeps splitting, and it helps to protect against the random mutations. And so lengthening the telomeres is almost like biologically reversing the aging a little bit. So Dr. Dean Ornish has proven that a plant-based diet has this effect. How that may relate to hair loss, if someone makes you more biologically younger, I could say potentially it could relate, but I haven't seen that. Can food block DHT? Roman says. Okay, so Roman, I am Googling DHT. DHT. Okay, dihydrotestosterone. Okay, you've stumped the doctor, Roman. You've stumped the doctor. I don't know that foods can block testosterone. Now, I do know that soy is helpful in women in balancing hormones, and that can play a role because it can sit on part of the estrogen receptors. And so there may be some effect with soy with this, but this is where we're talking about the estrogen receptors. But basically, you've stumped the doctor. I haven't really heard of foods that do this. If you know, put it in the comments. If you know something I don't, definitely put it in the comments. I am the internet's a big, wild world, and there's lots of information that I'm not always tracking. So with my patients, if we come across things like this, we work together and we study it. We get smarter on the issue to make the best educated guess on the way forward. Okay, let's see. We've got Purity and Plant says, other than a whole food plant-based diet, what would you recommend for trigeminal neuralgia? Okay, trigeminal neuralgia. Trigeminal neuralgia is a neuropathic pain that happens in the trigeminal nerve and can cause lightning-like sensations with light touch on the face, and it can be disabling, the pain. So with my patients who have this, I definitely recommend neurology's input. We call in for reinforcements with neurology because there's medicines. Carbamazepine used to be the primary treatment, but things may have evolved since then. And when you're having these kind of things, what I recommend is avoidance. Basically, you're trying to figure out your triggers and ways to avoid the pain and avoid the things that trigger the pain. So unfortunately, Rena, I'm not the trigeminal expert, but my patients, what I do is I call in reinforcements from neurology, and we try to get the best help that we can. And I help my patients try to review triggers and ways to avoid that. I hope that helps a little bit. That was Purity and Plants. Okay. Rena says, I know it's recommended to cut up broccoli before cooking or eating, but not sure for how much. Chopped fine or cut the floret off the stalk. I agree, Rena. Yes, we've heard about the chop and hold method. The chop and hold method. So what's going on here? What's Rena talking about? There is, in broccoli, there's this healthy chemical called sulforaphane that can help fight cancer. So we want to have sulforaphane. The short answer is I haven't seen the particulars, how finely it needs to be chopped. The assumption is that the more you chop, the more mixing and the more of the sulforaphane that will be made. I believe the enzyme is called myrosinase, and you have to, when you chew, the myrosinase is mixing with the precursor chemicals to make sulforaphane. The problem is the enzyme itself is not heat stable. So if you cook it, there's a potential that you don't get the reaction that will create the sulforaphane. So the concept is, if you're going to have broccoli, chop it up a little bit before you cook it, and that way sulforaphane will be created because the myrosinase will be released from the cell walls and you'll get the reaction. So I don't know the specific number, but the assumption is that a little bit of the reactions can go a long way. And so I'm just coming up with, you could chop it into maybe half or quarter florets or something like that. But this kind of information that was passed on through places like nutritionfacts.org, it wasn't very specific on how much blending or processing that has to take place in order to get the most benefit. So what's interesting, if you eat it raw, when you chew it up and you create the problem, even though it's in the stomach and it's hitting the acid, that you make the chemical sulforaphane in your stomach, and it's not destroyed by the body temperature. Okay. All right. Well, I think we might be hitting close to the end, but first we have to show you our special guest. Okay. Our special guest today is Mr. Shiitake. Mr. Shiitake Mushroom. Say hello. This was a Christmas present for me from twofunguys.com. My family got this for me. This is a plugged piece of, I think it's oak or some other hardwood. These little white things are little plugs full of shiitake mycelium. And so just since Christmas, I've grown 3. I've had one I've cut off, and these are 2 more growing. This is just kind of fun, right? Who knew? And here's the one shiitake that I took off today. Shiitake mushroom off my log from twofunguys.com. So it's always fun when things are growing and you get to watch it and learn about the food from a fresh perspective. And so everyone who came and saw my show today, thank you so much. Stay vegan, and I will see you next time. Take care.